with the advances in modern medicine, doctors still have not figured it all out, whether they like to admit that or not. For instance, every person here has in your body an appendix. Yet the brightest scientists among us have not yet conclusively determined the ultimate function of this part of our anatomy. Now, the adult appendix is only about 4 inches long, and it connects the intestine to the colon. For what that's worth, if that means anything to anyone. That's what Wikipedia told me. Not knowing the function of the appendix wouldn't be such a big problem if a burst appendix didn't kill 72,000 people every year. Such a difficult situation because once you first experience the symptoms of appendicitis, doctors tell us that we typically have between 24 and 72 hours to get to an emergency room or some type of doctor, or else you face a potentially fatal situation. When your appendix bursts, what happens is there's infection in there that then spreads inside your body cavity, infecting other organs, and oftentimes leads to a quick death. Now, we don't know what good the appendix is, but we certainly know what bad it can cause, which I just described. Ultimately, we don't know the purpose of this 4-inch tube that everyone has in their body. If we did know the purpose of the appendix, then maybe that could go a long way to solving the problem of appendicitis and possibly saving lives in the end. Now, none of us know the exact purpose of the appendix, but here's a better question for you. Do you know your purpose in life? It is clear that God has a purpose for the world. We can see that in the intelligent design of this universe. Amen. But I would say that you have a much better chance of determining your purpose in life before determining the purpose of the human appendix. Now, this morning I want to look at a man in the Bible who was sure of his purpose in life. This man was so sure of it that he could quote the scripture passage and verse that related to him. I'm talking about John the Baptist. We can go now to the Holy Word of God and look at a short passage. We will find it in John chapter 1. It's verses 19 through 23. If you're following in your pew Bible, it is page 750, although since that's the first page of the chapter, that number does not appear there. And it's at the bottom left corner of the page. Again, reading from verse 19 to verse 23. Now this was John's testimony when the Jews of Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. He did not fail to confess, but confessed freely, "I am not the Christ." They asked him, "Then who are you? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." Finally they said, "Who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" John replied in the words of Isaiah the prophet, "I am the voice of one calling in the desert, make straight the way for the Lord." You have heard the holy word of God. Keep it and treasure it in your hearts always. Amen. First, we need to set the stage. Back in the Old Testament, there were a couple different prophecies about this man, John the Baptist. One is found in the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 1, that says, "I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come, says the Lord Almighty." The messenger in that verse is none other than John the Baptist. And the second Old Testament reference to this man is found in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3, which reads, "A voice of one calling, in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." End quote. Again, Isaiah is referring to this man we know as John the Baptist. Now, Scripture tells us that John was aware of Jesus even before he was born. You may remember in the birth narrative of Jesus in the Gospel according to Luke, when Elizabeth met Mary, the mother of Jesus, Elizabeth felt John leap in her womb just at the thought of Jesus, whenever they came close together. This shows us that from the get-go, from the very beginning, the divine plan of Jesus was not limited to Jesus. It included his mother Mary, and Joseph, and Elizabeth, and John the Baptist, and John the Baptist's father Zechariah, and the list goes on. The plan of Jesus includes every Christian in history, up to including each and every one of you. Every Christian is included in God's ultimate divine plan. Now, John was Jewish, so he certainly would have been raised in a typical Jewish household, and thus would have been taught the Scriptures, and he would have read the Scriptures. Now, we read this in the Bible, and it makes sense, but if you actually put yourself in the shoes of John the Baptist, I always wonder what it must have been like to have been a character like him. What must it have been like to be in his shoes, or sandals as it were, one day reading his Bible, to use the modern equivalent, maybe reading his scroll at the temple, some Sabbath day possibly, reading those verses that I read for you, and first time realizing that was about him. I just cannot imagine what that would have been like. But for John, there was no doubt whatsoever about his purpose, because God foretold his purpose long before he ever lived. However, for us, not quite as easy as it was for John. No one here was subject of a prophecy written hundreds of years before you were born. Pretty certain God didn't verbally tell you that what your purpose was either, like he also did for Moses. Back in Exodus 9, God told Moses, quote, "I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth." Moses had the benefit of being told directly by God himself what his purpose was. We don't know how it feels to know our purpose in such a direct manner as this, and it may not surprise you if I tell you that most people do not know what their purpose in life is whatsoever. I can tell this because for my research, I subjected the question to the typical 21st century method of Googling it. I went to Google, like everyone does, and I searched for, what is my purpose in life? I thought this has to be good, and it was. Google tells me there are about 580 million hits to this search. Well, tells me there's a lot written on the subject, and I assume that's because a lot of people are asking this question. So I clicked on a few hints, did not have time to check out all 580 million of them. I stopped after 5 or 6 of them. You'll see why I stopped after 5 or 6. Of the links that seem to be more reputable and are not just John's blog or something like that, I found directions for writing exercises that a person can do that are designed to tap into your subconscious or some such other thing and unlock your ultimate purpose in life. That was an interesting one. One website promised that I could find my purpose in life in just 20 minutes by taking their online test. That was interesting. I did not take the test. And after that one, I thought to myself, wow, I must have gone through my whole life without knowing my purpose, and never knowing I was just 20 minutes away from finding it. You know? Makes a person wish they found that website a lot sooner, I guess. Another interesting site promised that your purpose in life is tied to your birthday. I was intrigued at this one since I like numbers, so I clicked on and I read some more. All you do is you add the numbers in your birth date, your month number, plus your day, plus your year, comes up with a figure, add those digits together until you get down to a single digit number, is basically the crux of it. Then you look up the digit on their website, which they provide a list for you, and it gives some vague horoscope type write-up that's supposed to give you insight to your ultimate purpose in life. I wasn't really impressed by that. I was intrigued to go through the calculation, but in the end I was sort of dismayed to learn that there apparently are only 9 different purposes in life if your birthday comes out to a 1 through 9, which are the only options. Problem with that is I serve a God who is much bigger than that. That gets to my point. God is certainly much bigger than that. As I was Googling what is my purpose in life, it occurred to me how pathetic this was, in all seriousness. I can't conceive of a person actually doing this for my own edification rather than for sermon preparation. There's an article that I came across that ties into what we're talking about today, and the author, who shall remain nameless to protect the guilty, gave pointers on how to write your own personal mission statement. Now, I know businesses have mission statements and vision statements and things like that, and they serve a purpose, but I've honestly never heard of a person taking the time out to sit down and write out something like this. What do you do with it once you have it? I mean, do you go to parties and compare personal mission statements? It's just not my thing. As I thought about all this internet nonsense, it occurred to me that we all already have our mission statement. It is in Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20. It says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." There are 3 different missions in there that I can count. As Christians, this is our mission. God gave it to us. And our purpose in life must be connected to these 2 verses in some way, shape, or form. I don't have to go to a website and crunch the numbers of my birthday or spend 20 minutes answering an online test. I already have my mission, and it was given to me when the resurrected Son of God gave it to His disciples, because we are then His disciples as well. Now the question is, we know our purpose, how do we fulfill it? Does this mean we must all get a degree from a Bible college and become international missionaries because it says make disciples of all nations, so we have to go there? No, I don't think we all have to do that. That is a possibility, and God does compel certain people to go into the international mission field, and we give thanks for that. But most of us fulfill this purpose by supporting missionaries, both financially and by prayer. That is because people who have been called into the mission field cannot fulfill God's purpose for their lives if they are not supported in the ways I mentioned. And that is the way that we are connected to the Great Commission, whether we leave our homes or not. Now back to John the Baptist for a minute. He knew his purpose too. In verse 23 we read, "John replied in the words of Isaiah the prophet, 'I am the voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the way for the Lord.'" Notice that John didn't complain about the thing that God called him to do. Unlike myself, if I'm being completely honest with you, I've often questioned God and what He has wanted me to do. But John knew what his calling was, and I suspect that had something to do with him spending many hours on his knees in prayer. That is what God is calling each and every one of us to do, to know the purpose that he has for your life and to make it and accept it as your purpose. Most often, Christians do not find themselves working in the international mission field that I mentioned. Most, though, find themselves being a missionary in other ways. No matter where you are a missionary. Some people do it in a 9-to-5 job. Some people do it by volunteering in a variety of places, maybe a soup kitchen or something like that. Some do it in school. I think we need many of them in our schools. Some do it even in things that you don't think about, like if you go out to eat and you're sitting there waiting for the waitress or the waiter to come to get your order. Maybe you just strike up a conversation with the person at the table next to you. Maybe you're standing in line at a grocery store, and maybe while the clerk is doing a price check because the item didn't ring up right, maybe you just make small talk with the person who's waiting in line behind you. Maybe they're having a bad day and you just give them some support. I had my own way of doing it, and I'm sure you do too. Your general purpose in life is to fulfill the Great Commission. We all have that same purpose, but your specific mission is to be used by God in a specific place and in a specific way. If you're not sure what your specific purpose is, I'm sorry to say that I can't do much to help you with that. I can pray for you, but you have to take it to the Lord in prayer. Ask and you shall receive is what the Lord's word says. You may find out what your purpose is very soon, or God may also delay and mold you in the meantime before he lets you in on what your plan is. Remember, it took Moses 40 years before he learned of his purpose. As we seek our specific purpose in life, we can still work on fulfilling our general purpose, which is fulfilling the Great Commission, which brings glory to God. The Bible tells us, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. Those are the words of the great Apostle Paul. Now, something else that should not be lost in this passage is that John was not embarrassed about his calling either. In verse 20 we read, he did not fail to confess, but confessed freely. He was talking to the priests and the Levites who were sent on behalf of the Jewish leaders. These were the people who should have known and understood the Scriptures like the backs of their hands. Because of this, they would have known Isaiah 40 verse 3 and Malachi 3 verse 1. Some people feel embarrassed when something out of the ordinary happens to them because they think it's proof that they are different than everyone else. In this case, John was very different from everyone else, but despite that, he was not embarrassed. And as followers of Christ, we should never be embarrassed either. Paul also said, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. I think sometimes we feel embarrassed to talk about Jesus with others and tell people how much Jesus means to us. Could be a variety of reasons for this. Could be because, again, fear of being different. When you're talking with someone, people strike up conversation about the weather, your job, whatever's going on in the news. Small talk stuff, you know. But people don't talk about Jesus. People just don't do that. You know, so I don't want to be different. So I'm not going to talk about that either. Well, you know what I do, and I don't have many opportunities, but when I do, I'm always looking for the opportunity to steer the conversation in that direction. Like something like this. If you're talking to a friend on Thursday or Friday, what are you doing this weekend? You answer, well, me, I'm going to make sure I get to church on Sunday. And the person might say something like, oh, really? Something exciting going on? Then that opens the door, you have their attention, and you tell them what you like about it. There's my friends go to church, we get to fellowship, there's this really great, funny young guy who, gets to talk to us. That was a joke. Okay. All that kind of stuff, but you steer the conversation in that direction. And there is no need to be embarrassed by talking to people and your friends about Jesus. And something that I've noticed is that in general, people want to talk about their faith, but they don't do it because they haven't been asked. People don't go around talking about their faith for a variety of reasons. I mentioned some of them. Among them, it's just not normal. But if you bring it up, you can ask their opinion on faith and Christianity, and more likely than not, I think they will give you an honest response, which again will open the door for further discussion. Remember, this is all about our purpose, which is to go into the world wherever the world is for you. All the while, we are praying and seeking God's counsel in regards to your specific purpose in life. In other words, you ask God for insight about how your job and how your relationship with others or anything else in your life helps to achieve the ultimate purpose of bringing glory to God. Ask God, how can you use me today to further your will? How can I be like your servant, John the Baptist, a voice of one crying in the wilderness, making straight the path for the Lord? I'm going to close by going back to the opening illustration. As Christians, we are not like a human appendix that has no obvious purpose. We all have a common purpose in life, but for each of us, our purpose works itself out in a variety of different ways. And the pages of the Bible tell us that God is not opposed to letting us in on that purpose for our life. I challenge each and every one of you today to seek God's will for your life, and if it is His will for you at this time, He will let you know what your purpose is. Because it is not until you know your purpose that you can fully cooperate with Him to bring the most glory to His holy name. Let us bow our heads and pray.